Before you spend a fortune on flower pots and garden decor, watch this video and I'm going to teach you how you can take thrifted items for just a few dollars and turn them into gorgeous garden decor. We have 5 amazing projects that I think you're absolutely going to love. Y'all stick around and let's go ahead and get started. On today's video, we are going to take this flower pot that I found on the curb in the trash pile in my neighbor's yard, and we are going to turn it into a vessel that looks like it's 200 years old. I'm going to show you how to make over your own flower pot to look this way, or any kind of vessel that you choose. When I found it, it had some rope that was all dry rotted, kind of halfway glued around the edges of it where that empty rim is. And where that is, we are going to use the new Trimmings 4 mold from IOD, and we are going to replace it with a really nice texture. This Trimmings mold looks really cool. There's 2 different sizes. There's a thicker side and a smaller side. My name is Emily. I'm with J. Bowen & Company. If this is your first time here, welcome. And if you've been here before, welcome back. I'm so happy that you decided to spend your time here with me. I think you are really going to enjoy these projects today. The entire mold is 6 inches by 10 inches. I previously sold out of this mold, but I went ahead and purchased some more because prior to even doing a project, I'd already sold out. If you don't have any of these trimmings molds, they are awesome. You should think about getting them. They make excellent textures and basically like a trimming that you can put on a frame. You can use these in many different projects. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to take out some cornstarch and you're going to dust your mold. The purpose of that is so that your clay does not stick to your mold. I just restocked on Trimmings 1, Trimmings 2, Trimmings 3, and Trimmings 4. I have all of them. You should pick up one of them or all 4 of them, and then you have all of these that you can use. Like I said, they're great borders for many different projects. You're then going to take out the air dry clay. That's also another IOD product, and you're going to warm it up in your hands. You're going to roll it until it's warmed up. And then piece by piece, I like to do a mold like this piece by piece because it's so large. You're just going to pinch it off, warm it up, and then apply it to your mold, inside of your mold. And then you're just going to pinch it off so that it's level with the actual mold. You can use your brayer to help level it out as well. Normally on a project like this, if I was doing a large mold that required a lot of clay, I would use a resin. But my resin is the kind that takes overnight to cure, and I didn't have time to cure it overnight, so I went ahead and used the clay. The benefit of using the air dry clay is that it is bendable and moldable, and you can use it on curved surfaces like this. Before you remove the casting from the mold, you want to rub the edges of the mold so that you get all of the excess clay off that you can. If you don't get it all off, you can just rub along the edges like I'm doing with my fingers to remove any of the excess clay. Because this is going to be an old world piece, it doesn't have to look perfect. That's the beauty of this type piece that I'm making over. You're then going to use the gravity, turn it over, and use gravity to help it release from the mold. And then I like to use Titebond quick and thick glue to apply my mold directly to the vessel. I don't know if y'all can hear, but Mr. Big is back again, staying for the weekend. My brother and his wife decided to take a quick little trip to visit family in St. Louis, so they asked me the night before last if I could keep Mr. Big, and of course I said yes. So he's here, and I don't know what he's barking at, but he's back there in the background. So you're just going to take your molding or your casting, and you're just going to apply the quick and thick, rub it all around the edges, and then apply it. At first I thought I wanted it higher, and then I decided to move it down lower. There's a bunch of holes. I don't know if you can see that in the video, but there's a whole bunch of little holes, and I was trying to cover those up as well. I repeated this process 3 different times, until I had completely wrapped around the flower pot. It ended up taking about 2 2/3 castings in order to wrap it completely around the flower pot. The last two projects on this video are similar projects to this one. However, I am using some herbs and some cinnamon, and I'm going to make the pieces look really cool. Y'all want to stick around to the very end because those turn out looking really high end and really cool, and I think you're going to want to know how to do that technique because you can use it on flower pots, vases, any kind of like stone figurines or anything like that. So I think you want to stick around so you can see that technique as well. The way that the molds are designed, the castings can line up and connect perfectly. However, because I only used 2/3 of the last one, what I ended up doing is just pressing them together, and then with my finger or with some scissors, I ended up just cutting it down. I then just used my fingers to press the mold and make sure that I had pressed it down all around the flower pot so that it was connected to the flower pot and flat to the flower pot. However, with the process that I'm going to show you next, I'm going to show you how to fill in the holes. But right now I'm just applying a little bit of extra glue right there. So what I decided to do, I thought that it would be good to make this pot into an old world vessel. This is the point where I decided that's what I wanted to do. I didn't like the indentions that were in the flower pot. Actually, I liked them. I didn't like them with the trimmings mold. I thought that they wouldn't really look right. And plus the trimmings mold stuck out a little far. So I thought to make this vessel a more cohesive look and like an old world flower pot, that I would then take out my spackling and I would go all around it with my hands. Now this is a very messy process. You basically just take the spackling. If you've never used it before, it's the same stuff that you would put in your walls. If there's a nail hole, you would fill in your walls, the nail holes on your walls with the spackling, and then you can just wipe it back with water and a paper towel after it dries. It starts off pink, and then when it's dry, it's going to turn white. So you're just going to use your hands and you're making a rough texture, and you're going to go all around the flower pot. Like I said, this is very messy, but it's actually kind of fun and it's pretty easy. If you see a spot that you're missing and you didn't cover, you would just cover again with your hands. You know, put some more on your hands and then just cover the spot. And you're just going to go round and round your flower pot until it's completely covered. I completed this part of the project. It was in the evening, so I ended up letting it dry overnight. In fact, I let it dry several nights before I could come back to this project because I did it during the week and now it's the weekend. When I watched this video, I saw that I missed a little spot, so I just went back with my spackling and covered up that little spot right there at the bottom of your screen. This is what my piece ended up looking like the next day. You can see how the clay is going to shrink up. And now here we are a few days later. I'm just showing what it ended up looking like, but we're going to fix the problem. Off camera, I ended up taking some Fresco, which is Fusion's Texture Medium, and I mixed it with Cashmere, is a color from Fusion Mineral Paint. And then I came up with a textured paint. And now I'm going to finish painting this flower pot. Wherever the spackling is, you really don't need to add any more texture unless you can still see some of the flower pot. Then you can fill in the spots with this textured paint. But it's really going to work well up along the casting where there is some empty spots. You can also do something similar with baking soda if you don't have this product, but this product works really well. And compared to baking soda, I would say it's a lot more fluid and easier to work with because I have used my fair share of baking soda along with paint, but I like how this works better. But if you don't have it, you can always use the baking soda method. And then I'm just going to paint the entire pot. And right there you can see where there's that extra space. I'm going to fill it in with the textured paint. And that way it will look more cohesive. I have a bunch of these little bitty lock and seal containers. I think I bought them at the Dollar Tree a long time ago for my kids' lunches and stuff. I don't use them anymore. So it's a great way to keep paint that you're going to use that you may need to keep sealed up. So like if you make this kind of texture and paint combination, you can keep it in a separate container and it will keep for a long time. I'm now taking some casement paint with a sponge, and I'm just going to sponge this lighter color white on top of this flower pot just to give it another dimension. Like I said before, in some of the following projects, I am going to use a similar technique, except for I'm taking it a little bit further than this one. On this one, I'm just using two different colors because I really love the look of white flower pots. I think they look really classy. They look really cool. They look good in multiple different decoration styles. If you have a traditional style or a modern style, cottagecore style, any of those styles, this type flower pot would look really pretty in. My husband was actually really impressed with how this piece turned out. He said it looks so old. He said it looks really old and he really liked it. And he suggested that I tell you guys to get a flower pot from Walmart, or that I do a flower pot from Walmart. And I told him, I bet most of my viewers probably have a flower pot that maybe just no longer their style anymore, or they could pick something up from Walmart or a thrift store. I see flower pots at thrift stores all the time, but probably most of us have a flower pot that maybe is just a color we no longer like anymore. So if you have one already that you're not using, I suggest making it over into a style that you might love. And now for the final reveal. If you like how this project turned out, please give me a thumbs up by hitting that like button and let me know what you think of this project. This is the longest project in all of the projects. The others are going to be much shorter, but I think you're going to equally enjoy them as well. The next project is this cutting board that I had in my personal collection, but I decided that it needed a makeover. So I took out my apothecary paint from DIY. This is a clay-based paint. It can be reactivated with water, so it does need to be sealed. I ended up giving it a coat of paint. I painted the top and all of the edges. One of the great things about DIY paint is that you can easily distress it. You also have to make sure that you seal it. Now, one thing I don't always say on these videos is you need to paint your project and then you need to wait 24 hours, overnight is best if you can, to let this paint completely cure. Just because it's dry to the touch does not mean that it is completely cured. The reason you want to let it dry overnight is so your paint is cured, and then when you go to add your top coat, it won't pull off the paint. When you add a top coat such as Big Top, that's DIY's top coat, you will see some of the clay come onto your project. Some of the paint will come on your paintbrush because it is reactivating just a little bit. So that is normal. Big Top is also a very thin material, almost water-like. I decided to distress this piece a little bit, so I took out a wet wipe and I'm just going around the edges just to expose a little bit of the wood. I wanted to add a stamp to this cutting board, so I pulled out the new Shade and Song stamp set. This is a perfect stamp for this time of year and throughout the summertime. It is birds, or two birds, and then these cherry blossom or some kind of blossoms on branches. It's an absolutely gorgeous stamp. So what I'm doing first is I'm just trying to lay out this stamp to make sure I have a good layout and just so that it looks good. When you're playing around with these stamps, you also need to look at the negative space as well as the actual print that you're putting on your piece. So that's what I'm doing, and I'm trying to configure it so that these birds look right. You have to make sure that the birds are facing the correct way depending on what side the stamp is on. So I'm just laying it out to get a good idea. You can always look at the bottom or the back of the stamp set. They often have examples on the back, and that helps too. If you're interested, I have a free creative group over on Facebook. It's completely free, and the link will be in the description. These stamps come with a piece of plastic on the top of them and then a piece of plastic on the bottom. So that's what I'm using here. But I also sell these larger ones that are much harder plastic, and I can't remember right now the name of those, but I sell those on my website. If you want to purchase that instead, they're just a few dollars, but they do make a big difference when you're putting these stamps on. A lot of times I'll just use my hands, but it's so much easier when you put them on the plastic first. So I'm just going to lay it on the plastic, press it down, and then I'm going to stamp it, and I'm stamping it with the IOD, the black ink. I wanted to have a strong image, so I'm using the black ink. And then I'm just going to wipe away a little bit where the ink got on the plastic part. And now I'm going to carefully position it, and then I'm just going to stamp it down, press it down in all areas so that it gets a good stamp-ish image. The thing about these stamps is sometimes the image transfers darker and sometimes it's lighter, looks a little bit more distressed, but that is just the beauty of these stamps. So these stamps also come with these masks. They are little cutouts of each of the stamp. If you, whatever you want to put in the forefront of the picture, you would stamp first and then you put a mask on top of it, and then you would stamp again, and it's going to put that image at the forefront of your piece versus it being covered up by the next image. So I went ahead and put those two masks on the two birds, and then I stamped up the next branch, positioning it how I wanted it, and then I'm just going to press down and carefully pull it up. When you're out thrifting, thrift tip that you might want to think about is, I always think about is, I want to find items that are one, good quality. They're made of wood, they're metal, they're sturdy. I typically go for the higher quality item to begin with so that the piece turns out higher quality versus using plastic or some other cheaper type material. This is a solid wood piece, so you know once it's finished and once it's painted or stamped on, molds, whatever you end up doing with it, it's going to be a much higher end piece. So if you decide to keep it, it's nicer. It's a nicer decoration. If you decide to give it away, it's just appears to be higher end, or if you try to sell it, you're going to get more money from it just right off the rip by having it a nicer material. People notice those kind of things. So here I am just stamping it. That image got a little bit lighter, a little bit more distressed, and now I'm just going to add some more blossoms to the other side so that limb isn't just floating. Normally I would want the limb to be further to the right, but I think I put the bird image a little bit to the left, but that's all right. The thing about art is you can just play around, and if you don't like how it turns out, you can just paint right over it. It's no problem. Like I said before, you have to seal this piece, but you have to be careful when you have stamps. You can make it smear if the paint or the ink has not dried. So to be on the safe side, it's a good idea sometimes just to spray it with a matte clear first, and then you can add a top coat. I let the ink dry for several hours. I tested it to make sure that it was already dry, and then I just covered it with a coat of clear wax from DIY, and then I gently wiped it away. I love how this cutting board turned out. I think the shade and song stamp set is really cool, and there's so many possibilities, and you get to use it over and over and over, so it's totally worth it. The next project is a quick and easy project. This is a flower pot, a smaller size flower pot that I thrifted. I painted it and I put this crockery stamp on it a couple years ago. It has been in my booth. It didn't sell. I mean, I can see why. But anyway, I decided that I would take it back to its roots and add a mold and just make it look better. So I have this whole bag of molds that I made around Christmas time. I just batch made a ton of molds. It was really fun because I made a bunch of them at once with the resin. If you want to see how to make them, some of my first videos show how to make resin molds. It's really easy. You just take 2 parts. The resin comes with 2 parts. You mix it together and then you just stir it up for a while. You follow the directions, pour it in the molds, and then you let it set. Mine have to set overnight to cure, so I'm just using these molds that are already made. That's the beauty of having these molds already made. The only downside is on certain things like this that are a little bit curved, it may not lay exactly flat, but you can use that same textured paint as we used the first time in the first flower pot to fill in the gaps. So I just put some Tide Bond Quick and Thick, and then I'm just going to tape it down onto my project. I realized I needed a little bit more paint a little bit more glue because some of these molds are a little bit concave, I guess you might say, so it needed a little bit more glue to fill in the surface so that it would adhere to the project. I did this on both sides, and then I took some packing tape and I'm just going to tape over it, and I'm just going to let it sit until it dries. This stamp is called the Bird Song stamp, and it has a lot of different images of birds perching and flying. So if you love birds, this is a great mold to have. The beauty of molds is you can use them over and over and over, just like stamps. So once you purchase them, they have multiple unlimited uses. So the next thing I did is I took out some paint from Rethunk Junk. The color is called Cactus Rose. Rethunk Junk is a Georgia-based company. It's an all-in-one furniture paint. It has a built-in primer and a built-in sealer, so it does not require a primer and you do not have to seal it. If you're interested in purchasing any of these products that you've seen on today's video, including all of the paints, the Fusion Mineral Paint, the DIY paint, the Rethunk Junk Paint, and the Iron Orchid Design products, they're all available on my website for purchase. I'll put a link to them in the description, and I'll go ahead and put a link in the comments so you can jump right to my website. I'm now adding some white wax from DIY, and I'm just coating it, and then I'm going to rub it back with a paper towel. I just love the look of terracotta. I love to make things over to look like terracotta, but in this case, I'm just taking it back to its roots. It was terracotta, I painted it, and now it's going back to terracotta. So I hope you enjoy this project. It's a simple and easy project, but you can see how you could do this to any flower pot. If you have a flower pot that's a color you don't like and you want it to look more natural and organic, you can just make it look like terracotta. It's very simple and easy. If you like how this project turned out and you like the look of this terracotta, please give me a thumbs up. Remember, subscribe if you haven't. The next project is this wooden planter that I purchased. I think I paid $3.99 for it, but it's a pretty decent size. The reason that I found it appealing was, one, because it's a good item to thrift right now because you can make it over into a really nice spring, summer type piece. And two, it had that really nice flat surface. I knew that if I wanted to put a paint inlay on it, a stamp, or a mold, that it was a perfect canvas for that. So always look for pieces that have flat surfaces. Now this piece is very lightweight, so it's not the best quality, but I think once it's painted, it's going to have a really nice look. And I'll be able to get a decent amount of money for it. And if I don't sell it, I can give it as a gift, and it would be a nice gift as well. So the first thing that you want to do is make sure that it's cleaned, and then also take off any stickers and sticker residue, because if you don't, then the paint will not stick, especially if you're selling it. If you're keeping it for yourself, it's not as big of a deal. Since this surface area was so large, I looked into my bag of molds and I found these large mushrooms or toadstools from the bag that I had previously made, and I decided to glue them on the front. Everything that I put mushrooms on, they always sell in my booth. Some people love mushrooms. Sometimes people on these videos say they don't love mushrooms, but for one thing is for sure, they always sell. So I thought that I would add these to this planter, and plus they're just really cute. I think they're cute. These molds are from the Toadstool mold. It is also one of my favorite molds. I think that you will like that mold as well. So I added some of the Type Bond Quick and Thick, and then now I'm just adding the tape, the painter's tape, just to hold them in place. If this was a flat piece, I probably wouldn't have to do it, but it's at an angle, and I thought there is a possibility that they could slip off. Plus it also just held them down tighter in place. So now it's been the next day, and I'm now taking them off. I had plans to do this all in one day, but then my husband called me up to our shop, that's Detail Link in Beaufort, Georgia. He was helping pack up a bunch of my orders, and he just got frustrated because he doesn't know what a mold is, what a stamp is, what a transfer is, what a paint inlay is, and then all these different paints. And he just got a little bit flustered and frustrated because he doesn't know what these things are. He was having to FaceTime me as I went over all of the different products, and some of those molds and things look a lot alike. So he called me up to the office and said, will you please come up here and help me get all these orders together? And y'all, I just want to thank you so much for all of your orders. Y'all have really been placing a lot of orders and really helping my family financially out, and so I really appreciate that. It really means a lot. I try to get the orders out as soon as possible. This week they didn't get out as soon as I wanted them to, although I had everything at the office every day, the very next day, to get sent out, but for whatever reason our office manager was unable to get all of them out. It's just, he works for my husband as well, and then he ships out my stuff. So anyway, they are all going to go out. All of this week's orders that have not gone out will go out first thing on Monday. In fact, my husband is finishing up the orders that have already been placed, and he's going to have them all up at the UPS, or UPS actually comes and picks them up from our store and will send them off to you directly. So thanks again. So now I took out the Rethunk Junk Paint. This is another Rethunk Junk Paint. It's called Oyster. It's a very pretty, just light, neutral, just kind of a light beigey tan color, just a really nice neutral. And I'm just going to end up giving this 2 coats of paint. I'm now taking that, I decided I was going to add some of the oyster paint to that leftover texture paint, and then I thought, why do I need to do that? I could have just painted it with a texture paint and added, what I'm doing is I'm adding it into underneath the mold so there's no space showing. That's what I'm doing here. It may be a little hard to see, but I thought, why did I end up adding the oyster paint to that? I didn't need to do that because I could have just gone right over and painted it with the color oyster again. But I didn't do that. I decided to mix it up. Sometimes I don't think about what I'm doing till afterwards, and then I think I didn't have to do that. But I ended up just taking my paintbrush and I'm just stippling. I'm going to stipple or pounce on the entire piece, because you have to do that to get underneath the edges of, or between your mold and your piece. But then I thought, I'm going to have to do that on that whole side. So I ended up doing the whole side like that. So it's going to have a little bit different texture than the other part of the wood, but that's all right. It just adds some more character and another dimension. After this piece had completely dried, I took out the aging wax from Fusion and I covered the entire piece, and then I wiped it back with a paper towel. I love using waxes on pieces. They just add an extra dimension and they make things look really good. It gets down in all the little nooks and crannies and crevices, and it just gives it a more of a 3-dimension look. I ended up just doing it on the front side. The other sides do not need it. Rethunk Junk Paint and Fusion, neither one of them need a sealer, so it wasn't necessary. I just wanted to do it on the front side. So then if someone wanted to use the back side and not see the front side, they could just turn it around and have a different look as well. I really love how this planter turned out. Y'all let me know in the comments what you think about this project. And if you're enjoying these projects, you're getting some inspiration, you have some new ideas, you found some value in my video, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel. It really helps my channel grow, and it signals to YouTube that this is a good video to show to other people. Here's a little behind the scenes of J-Bone and Company. Here I'm getting a bunch of your orders together, and I just thought I would share a little bit of our warehouse and what my setup looks like at Detail Link there in Beaufort, Georgia. So if you're local, you can head to Beaufort, Georgia and check out my store, or the OCC that's out of the Cedar Chest in Gainesville, Georgia. At the Beaufort location, I carry Fusion Mineral Paint, IOD products, and Whimsical papers. My husband was nice enough after the store was closing in Habersham County, Georgia, to allow me to carve out a little niche in his store to allow me to have my IOD stuff and my Fusion stuff and my Whimsical papers. Once again, I really appreciate all of your support and your continued support. If you're still watching, leave me a mushroom emoji so I know that you're still here. The next project is this candle that I've had in my kitchen for a while. I have never been crazy about that color green. I like green, but not this color, so we're going to make it over. When the paint is still wet, I am going to take out some cinnamon. You heard me right, some cinnamon, and I'm going to sprinkle it on this pot so that it gives it some more texture. Not that this one didn't really need any texture, but it's going to give it some color, a rusty color that makes it look natural. The thing about these candles, they were already green. I love green, but they were kind of a weird color green. I don't know. This color green just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I never liked them. I always wanted to make them over. Like I said, they have candles in them now, but soon they won't, and then I could either use it as a little flower pot, or I could go ahead and pour another candle in there. Either way, I keep telling myself I'm going to pour candles in. I have all this candle making supplies and containers. Never really have done it, but I'm ready in case I ever get around to doing it. Maybe I'll do that on this channel at some point. But what I'm doing is I'm just taking this cinnamon and I'm just rubbing it in to the details of this piece. So one really bonus part about this is this candle smells so good. And now I'm just adding some more wet paint to the top, and I'm going to add some cinnamon to it again. So to do these projects, you basically need 2 colors of paint. You need a lighter color and a darker color. I'm using cashmere as my darker color and then casement as my lighter color. And I'm going to show you what I do. So after I get all of the cinnamon on and it is nice and dry, I'm just taking this sponge. I'm going to dip it in the paint, then offload it a little bit or remove some from the sponge, and then I'm just kind of sponging it on. So now it's a 3-color look, 3 different colors, and so it just has a nice aged look. I actually keep this candle in my kitchen, but it would be good to have it out on a porch or something like that, or a patio, because it looks really rustic and cool. So here is the final reveal, so you can see how you could do the same technique on another flower pot or container. The next one is this other green flower pot. It's actually from a candle company, a local candle company in Habersham County. I thrifted both of these pieces for about $3 each. They're actually large candles, so I thought that was a pretty good deal. But on this piece, I'm going to paint it with the same color, but now I just grabbed some herbs out of my kitchen, some oregano, some basil, and then I'm just pressing it down into the paint. You can't even smell this oregano or basil for some reason, which is actually good because I think that'd be kind of weird with the cinnamon, but you can use expired herbs that you have or even ones that are not expired. It doesn't take a whole lot. You're just adding some character and some texture to your piece. After I painted the inside, I thought maybe I shouldn't have painted the inside, but it was a little too late now, but that's all right. So I'm just going back over it with a little bit more paint, and then I'm going to go over it with sprinkle some more cinnamon and some more herbs, and it's just going to give it a nice organic look. It's really messy though, so prepare yourself for that. But I think you're going to like how this one turns out. It's going to look a little bit different because besides the cinnamon, it also has those other herbs. After I have sprinkled the cinnamon and I have let that paint dry, I'm going to go back again with the casement just to add some more white to it because I actually really love white. I have a lot of white in my house. My house is pretty white for the most part, and then I add the extra antique looks and modern things to it. But I really love the look of fresh white paint. And now what I'm doing is the same thing that I did before. Is I'm just dipping the sponge in the paint and I'm just sponging it onto this piece. You're not going to see the sponge texture because of the texture of the flower pot, so it doesn't look like 1980s sponging and all that. So don't worry about that, or 90s, whenever that was. Anyway, here is the final result. If you love how these look, y'all let me know. If you're in the mood for more thrift flips, you can check out my latest video. It'll be right there on the screen. And thank you so much for watching today. I really appreciate it, and talk to you in the comments.